The day my son left me at the nursing home is a memory etched so deeply into my heart that even time cannot dull its sting. I remember the soft drizzle that morning, raindrops clinging to the car windows like the tears I tried to hold back. My son, Daniel, sat beside me, tapping on his phone. His expression a mix of distraction and discomfort, as though being in the same space as me was an inconvenience he could not wait to resolve. I tried to start a conversation, asked about his work, about his wife, about the children I rarely got to see. But his answers were clipped, each one shorter than the last, until I finally gave up and sat silently, staring at the blur of the world outside, wondering how I had ended up here. When the car finally stopped, I saw the sign, Willow Pines Nursing Home. The name sounded gentle, almost poetic, but my heart sank like a stone, because I knew instantly what this meant. He helped me out, not with the warm hands of a loving son but with the mechanical efficiency of someone ticking off a task on a list. The nurses greeted us kindly, their smiles practiced, but their eyes told me they had seen this scene 1,000 times before. An elderly parent being unloaded like excess baggage. I tried to mask my confusion with a smile, to hold on to some dignity, but when Daniel leaned down and said, "Mom, this is for the best, you'll be taken care of here," my chest tightened so painfully I thought I might collapse. For the best. Those words echoed like a cruel joke. For whose best? Not mine, surely. He gave me a quick hug, the kind that felt like he was hugging a stranger, then turned on his heel and walked away. His footsteps fading down the hall as if he couldn't leave fast enough. I wanted to call out, to remind him of everything I had done for him. The nights I stayed awake when he was sick, the sacrifices I made so he could attend college, the dreams I set aside so his could thrive. But my voice caught in my throat, trapped by the sharp pain of betrayal. The first night was the hardest. The room smelled of antiseptic and faint perfume from the previous occupant whose belongings still lingered on the empty shelf. I lay in the unfamiliar bed, listening to the muffled sobs of other residents through thin walls, each cry a reminder that I wasn't alone in my abandonment. But that didn't comfort me. It only deepened my despair, knowing so many of us had been discarded by the very children we had once held dear. I clutched the small photo of Daniel as a boy, smiling with ice cream smeared on his cheeks, and I cried until my pillow was soaked. How could that innocent child, who once begged me never to leave his side, grow into a man who could cast me aside so easily? Days blurred into one another. Meals were served on schedule, the same bland food placed in front of me, eaten in silence among faces hollowed by grief and time. I sat in the communal room pretending to read, while watching the door with desperate hope that Daniel might walk in, arms open, apologies ready. But he never came. Phone calls were rare, each one shorter than the last, filled with excuses about work and family, until eventually the calls stopped altogether. The silence was deafening. I began to wonder if he even remembered I existed, or if he thought of me only as a responsibility successfully passed on to strangers. But in that darkness, a seed of something else began to grow. Not forgiveness, not yet, but a quiet, burning determination. I realized I could not spend my remaining years waiting by a door that might never open. And though my heart still ached for the son I had lost to his own selfishness, a part of me knew that my story was not finished yet. The days at Willow Pines slowly fell into a rhythm, but it was a rhythm that felt like a cage closing around me. Every morning the blinds opened at the same hour, the fluorescent lights buzzed to life, and the smell of porridge and weak coffee drifted through the hallways. Some residents shuffled down the corridors with walkers, their eyes glazed with defeat, while others sat by the window staring into nothing, their bodies alive but their spirits already gone. I feared becoming one of them, just another forgotten shadow, waiting out the rest of my life in silence. I told myself I was stronger than that, but grief is a heavy blanket. No matter how you push against it, it weighs you down until you can hardly breathe. It was during those bleak days that I met her. Nora, the nurse who would change everything. She was different from the others, and I noticed it right away. While some nurses went about their duties mechanically, Nora always carried herself with warmth. Her laugh was soft but genuine, like a breeze that could sweep away the dust of despair. The first time she walked into my room, I was sitting on the edge of the bed, clutching that same photograph of Daniel as a boy. I tried to hide it quickly, embarrassed by my tears, but she noticed. Instead of pretending not to see as others might have, she sat beside me and said, "He must be very special to you." Her voice carried no judgment, only kindness. I wanted to tell her the truth, that he had been my entire world, but all I managed was a nod. Over the following weeks, Nora became a constant presence in my life. She didn't just bring my medication or check my vitals, she listened. She asked about my life before the nursing home, and when I told her about raising Daniel on my own after his father died, about working 2 jobs to keep food on the table, her eyes filled with something I hadn't seen in a long time, respect. She didn't see me as a burden, or an old woman wasting away. She saw me as a person, a mother, someone who had lived and loved and given everything she had. And for the first time since Daniel abandoned me, I felt visible again. Our conversations stretched late into the evenings. She told me about her own struggles, how she had grown up in foster care, how she had longed for a family that never came, and how caring for others had become her way of giving love back to the world. There was a loneliness in her words that mirrored my own, and in that shared pain, a bond began to form. Sometimes she would sneak me a cookie from the staff room or bring me a cup of tea when she knew I couldn't sleep. Small acts, perhaps, but they meant more to me than anything I had received from my own son in years. I began to notice something else too. Nora treated every resident with the same patience and kindness, even those who were difficult, even those who lashed out in their confusion. But with me there was an extra softness, an attentiveness that felt almost like family. She asked about my favorite music, and one day when I thought no one was listening, she brought a small speaker and played one of the songs my late husband and I used to dance to. My heart ached with memories, but for the first time in so long, the ache was mixed with joy. It was in those moments that I began to see a truth I had been blind to before. Family is not always the people bound to you by blood. Family is the ones who stand beside you when everyone else turns away. And though I hadn't yet said the words out loud, a thought had begun to take root in my mind, one that both terrified and comforted me. Maybe the child I had poured my soul into had abandoned me, but perhaps life was giving me another chance, another kind of family, in the form of this young woman who saw me when no one else did. As weeks turned into months, my relationship with Nora deepened in ways I hadn't expected. It wasn't just the kindness she showed me, it was the sense that she truly understood me. I found myself looking forward to her shifts, counting the hours until she would appear in my doorway with that gentle smile. The other residents noticed too. "That nurse really likes you," one of them whispered with a hint of envy, but I didn't take it for granted. I had been invisible for so long that simply being noticed felt like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. One evening I couldn't sleep. The quiet of the nursing home was suffocating. The ticking clock felt like a cruel reminder of passing time. I shuffled toward the common area, expecting it to be empty, but found Nora sitting alone at one of the tables. Her head rested on her hands, eyes closed, exhaustion etched across her face. I hesitated, not wanting to disturb her, but when she lifted her head and saw me, she smiled as though I were the person she had been waiting for all along. "You're up late," she said softly. "So are you," I replied. "Shouldn't you be home resting?" She laughed lightly, but there was no joy in it. "Home," she repeated, almost as if it were a foreign word. That's when I realized she didn't have a home to return to, not in the way most people imagine it. She lived alone in a small apartment near the facility. Her family ties severed long ago. Her life was centered here, around people like me. Forgotten souls left behind. Something shifted inside me then. I had spent so much time drowning in my own pain that I hadn't noticed the quiet strength it took for her to keep showing up every day, offering compassion to people who sometimes gave nothing back. "You deserve better," I told her without thinking. She looked at me surprised. "So do you," she answered, and for a moment, it felt as though two broken hearts had recognized each other. From that night forward, our conversations became more personal. I told her stories about Daniel's childhood, about his first steps, his school plays, his college graduation, the milestones of a life I had sacrificed everything for. Sometimes my voice would break, and she would squeeze my hand, grounding me in the present. In return, she shared pieces of her past. How birthdays were just another day in foster care, how she often packed her bags in garbage bags when moving between homes, and how she promised herself that when she grew up, she would never let anyone feel as unloved as she once did. It was impossible not to feel drawn to her. She embodied the love I had yearned for from my son but never received. And as the days passed, I realized something else. She needed me too. Beneath her strength was a girl who had never truly been mothered, who had never been told she was enough, who had never been given the unconditional care that I had once given to Daniel. Our bond was no longer just nurse and patient. It was something deeper, something that defied titles. One afternoon, as she adjusted the blanket over my legs, I looked at her and whispered, "You remind me of the daughter I never had." She froze for a moment, then blinked back tears. "And you remind me of the mother I always wished for," she said. That simple exchange felt like a sacred vow, unspoken but undeniable. The days that followed seemed lighter. Even the walls of willow pines felt less oppressive when she was around. But with every passing moment, a seed of anger continued to grow inside me. Daniel had abandoned me, left me here to wither, while this young woman, who owed me nothing, was giving me more love and respect than he ever had. It was a cruel irony, but also a revelation. Perhaps blood ties weren't as sacred as I had believed all my life. And slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, an idea began to take shape in my mind. I didn't know exactly how or when, but I knew one thing for certain. If my son thought he could discard me like an old coat, he was gravely mistaken. Life had given me a second chance to define my family, and when the time was right, I would show Daniel just how wrong he had been to underestimate me. As the seasons shifted outside Willow Pines, the changes within me were far more profound. Where there had once been bitterness and despair, there was now a flicker of strength, kindled by Nora's steady presence. But that strength carried with it a simmering resentment toward Daniel. Every phone call that never came, every visit that never happened, burned in my chest like hot coals. He had erased me from his life, and yet here I was, clinging to every scrap of memory I had of raising him. I told myself over and over that children weren't supposed to forget, that the bond between mother and son couldn't just be severed by convenience. And yet Daniel had done exactly that. Nora noticed the storm inside me, though I tried to hide it. One evening, she caught me staring blankly at the photograph of Daniel I kept on my nightstand, a younger version of him, smiling at the camera as he held his college diploma. My proudest day, now tainted by the reality of his betrayal. "You're hurting yourself keeping that picture there," Nora said gently. "It's all I have left," I whispered, my voice trembling. "If I let go of it, it feels like I'm admitting he never really loved me." She knelt beside me, her eyes glistening with compassion. "Sometimes holding on hurts more than letting go," she said softly. Those words echoed in my mind long after she left the room. A week later, a letter arrived for me, and for the first time in months my heart leapt. Could it be Daniel? Had he finally remembered that I existed? My hands trembled as I tore open the envelope, only to find a generic holiday card with his signature scrawled at the bottom. No note, no warmth, no acknowledgement of my loneliness. It was a gesture made out of duty, not love, and it shattered me in a way that even silence hadn't. I tried to smile through it, to tell myself it was something at least. But Nora saw the truth in my eyes. She sat with me that night, holding my hand while I wept like a child. "You don't have to keep proving yourself worthy of love," she murmured. "Some people just don't know how to give it." Her words were both a balm and a blade, comforting yet cutting because they revealed a truth I had resisted. Daniel might never change. And yet, in the ashes of that realization, something new was born. For the first time, I stopped waiting for Daniel to rescue me, stopped clinging to the hope that he would walk through the door with open arms. Instead, I began to look at the life I had left, at the choices still within my grasp. I wasn't powerless. I still had a voice, a will, and, most importantly, I had Nora. The more I thought about it, the more the idea took root. Why should everything I had worked for, every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every coin saved, end up in the hands of someone who had discarded me? What had Daniel done to deserve the fruits of my life's labor? Nothing. But Nora. She had given me more in these months than Daniel had in years. One afternoon, as we shared tea in the common room, I tested the waters. "Nora," I said, my tone casual though my heart was racing, "do you ever think about what family means? Not the one you're born into, but the one you choose." She smiled wistfully. "All the time. I think family is about who shows up for you, who stands by you when everyone else turns away." Her words struck me like lightning. Yes, that was it. Family wasn't defined by blood, but by love, by loyalty, by presence. And in that moment, I knew what I had to do. My will, my legacy, my very life. None of it belonged to Daniel anymore. It belonged to someone who saw me, valued me, loved me without conditions. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, my mind spinning with plans. A quiet determination settled over me, replacing the hollow ache that had once consumed me. I would rewrite my will. I would choose Nora as my heir, as the daughter of my heart. And when Daniel finally came back around, as I knew he would one day, it wouldn't be me begging for his love. It would be him, stunned to discover the consequences of abandoning the woman who had given him everything. For the first time in years, I fell asleep with a sense of peace. Not because Daniel had returned to me, but because I no longer needed him to. The next morning, I awoke with a resolve I hadn't felt in years. For too long, I had been living as though Daniel still held the strings of my life, as though I was a marionette waiting for his approval to dance. But now, as the soft winter light streamed through the blinds of my room at Willow Pines, I realized I had something Daniel could never take from me: choice. The power to decide where my story would go from here. I began my day quietly as always. Tea at 7, a slow shuffle to the garden by 9, a few pages of a novel by noon. But inside I was buzzing, my mind racing with every possibility. For months, I had been a shadow of myself, beaten down by abandonment, consumed by grief. But now I had a mission. And when an old woman has a mission, you can bet she clings to it like life itself. Still, it wasn't easy. The decision to rewrite my will was both liberating and terrifying. This wasn't just about money or property. It was about legacy. Every dollar I had saved, every sacrifice I had made, every asset that represented my life's work, it was all meant for my son. That had always been the plan, the dream that kept me going when times were tough. But dreams change. Or rather, people show you they never deserved the dream in the first place. I called my attorney, Mr. Weller, who had handled my estate planning for decades. His voice crackled on the line, familiar and steady, but tinged with surprise when I told him what I wanted. "You're certain about this?" he asked cautiously. "Leaving everything to someone outside the family is unusual." I took a deep breath, my hands gripping the phone as though it were my anchor. "Family isn't always blood, Mr. Weller. Sometimes it's the ones who show up when everyone else walks away." He was silent for a moment before replying. "Very well. We'll make the changes. I'll come to Willow Pines tomorrow." When I hung up, I felt a weight lift from my chest, though it was quickly replaced by another: fear. What would Nora think? Would she feel burdened by such a gift, or worse, would she think I was trying to buy her kindness? That thought gnawed at me until I could hardly sit still. That evening, as we sat together in the dining hall, I gathered my courage. "Nora," I began, my voice trembling, "I've been thinking about the future, and I need you to understand something important. You've been more than just a nurse to me. You've been family. And because of that I've decided. I want you to inherit what I leave behind." Her eyes widened in shock. For a moment I thought she might laugh or worse, walk away. But instead, her hand reached across the table to clasp mine, firm and warm. "Are you sure?" she whispered. Tears pricked at my eyes. "I've never been more sure of anything. My son abandoned me. You didn't. You've shown me love, respect, dignity, things money can't buy. If anyone deserves it, it's you." Her expression softened, and for the first time, I saw tears glimmer in her eyes too. "You don't know what that means to me," she said quietly. "I never expected anything from you. I just wanted to make sure you never felt alone." At that moment, I realized it wasn't just about me giving her something. It was about honoring the bond we had built, the strange but beautiful family we had created in the unlikeliest of places. Later that night, as I lay in bed, I thought of Daniel. I imagined his face when he learned the truth, when he realized that the mother he had thrown away had found love and loyalty elsewhere. I could almost see the disbelief in his eyes, the anger twisting his mouth, the regret simmering beneath it all. But I didn't smile at the thought of revenge.
Well,
what I felt was justice. A quiet, steady justice that didn't need to scream or gloat. My life, my legacy, my love. It would all go to someone who had earned it. And in that decision, I found a strength I hadn't felt in decades. The next day, Mr. Weller arrived with papers in hand. As I signed them, each stroke of the pen felt like a declaration. I will not be forgotten, I will not be discarded, and I will not let betrayal define the ending of my story. Nora stood beside me, her hand on my shoulder, and for the first time in years, I felt like I truly belonged. The days slowly blurred into weeks, and though the world outside the nursing home seemed alive with energy and movement, inside the walls my life moved at a different pace. A quieter, slower one filled with routine. Yet within me, emotions never stopped moving. Anger, hurt, and sorrow often swirled together like storm clouds, but among them, there was also gratitude. Gratitude for Emily, the nurse who never treated me as a burden but as someone worthy of dignity and compassion. Every morning when she came in with her cheerful smile, offering a kind word or listening ear, I felt a flicker of hope, a reminder that even though my own son had abandoned me, humanity had not completely left my side. Her warmth often made me wonder what true family really meant, because the woman caring for me was not bound by blood, but she seemed to understand me better than the boy I had raised with my own hands. Still, the wound of my son's betrayal refused to heal. I had raised him alone after his mother passed, sacrificed my own happiness to see him educated, fed, and clothed, working 2 jobs to make sure he never felt the sting of poverty. I remembered the nights I skipped meals so he could eat, the times I mended his clothes in the dim light, the mornings I left for work while he was still asleep, whispering a prayer that one day he would live better than I did. To me, he was my entire world, the reason I endured, the reason I never gave up. And now, that same son had looked me in the eyes and declared, "You'll be better off here," leaving me in this home as though I were a burden, a package he no longer wanted to carry. The betrayal burned deeper with each passing day, because I wasn't expecting luxury from him, only love and care, the same love and care I had poured into him all his life. The breaking point came one rainy afternoon. I sat by the window, staring at the droplets racing down the glass, and suddenly, a memory of his childhood struck me. I remembered him running inside during a thunderstorm, frightened by the booming sky, clinging to me tightly while I wrapped him in a blanket and whispered, "Don't worry, son, I'm here. As long as I'm here, nothing will ever harm you." That moment came crashing back with such intensity that tears spilled down my cheeks. But the bitter truth followed right after. He wasn't here for me anymore. The boy I had once shielded from storms had become the man who abandoned me in one. Emily noticed my tears and sat beside me. She didn't press me for words, but her silence was comforting. Her presence strong enough to hold me together when I felt like crumbling. Finally, she spoke softly. "You don't deserve this pain. Some people fail to see the value of the love they've been given. But you still matter. You matter a lot." Her words lit something inside me. A spark of strength, a reminder that my life was not over simply because my son had turned his back on me. For the first time, I realized that perhaps family was not about blood alone. It was about who stood with you when you were weakest, who lifted you when you had fallen, who cared for you when the world forgot you. That rainy day, I reached a decision deep within my heart. If my son could not cherish me, then I would no longer waste away waiting for him to return or change. I would choose my own family, my own future. I looked at Emily, her hands wrapped gently around mine, and I felt a sense of peace I hadn't known in years. I silently vowed that the love and loyalty she had shown me would not go unrewarded. It was in that moment that the seed of my decision to rewrite my will was planted. The morning after the storm, the world outside looked cleansed, washed fresh by the rain. Sunlight poured through the windows of the nursing home, casting golden patterns on the floor. I sat in my chair, breathing in deeply as if the light itself carried a message, that after every storm, no matter how fierce, there was always calm and renewal. My heart still carried scars, but something inside me had shifted. For the first time since being abandoned here, I did not wake up with bitterness gnawing at my soul. Instead, I felt clarity, as though the universe had whispered that it was time to take back control of my story. Emily walked in with her usual cheerful greeting, carrying a tray of breakfast. She fussed over me like she always did, making sure the food wasn't too hot, adjusting the blanket draped over my lap, asking if I had slept well. But today I studied her with new eyes. This woman was not simply a nurse doing her job. She had become my confidant, my comforter, and in many ways, the daughter I never had. Her patience when I told stories of the past, her laughter when I cracked my old jokes, and her gentle silence when my tears came. All of these were more valuable than the money I had once thought would bring me happiness. I thought about my son again, but this time without the consuming anger. Instead, I saw him for who he truly was. A man blinded by greed, too busy chasing wealth to understand the treasure he had thrown away. Perhaps, I reasoned, he had grown up believing that money was the answer to everything. Maybe in giving him too much, I had failed to teach him the value of love, loyalty, and gratitude. The thought stung, but it also freed me, because it reminded me that his choices were his own. I had given him the foundation, the sacrifices, the care. What he did with it was beyond my control. That afternoon, I asked Emily to sit with me in the garden. The air was fresh, carrying the earthy scent of rain-soaked soil. I looked at her and said quietly, "You've been more to me than just a nurse. You've shown me kindness that even my own blood couldn't. Do you know what that means to me?" Her eyes softened, and she shook her head modestly. "I'm just doing my duty," she whispered. But I knew it was more than that. No duty forced her to hold my hand when I cried. No duty required her to stay after her shift ended to make sure I was comfortable. No duty demanded that she treat me as a father, instead of a patient. That was love, the pure, selfless love I had longed for but had not received from the one person I had expected it from. It was then that I voiced the thought that had been growing within me since the stormy night. "Emily, have you ever thought of having a father figure?" She looked at me surprised, unsure where I was going with this. I smiled, though my heart pounded with emotion. "Because I would be honored if you thought of me that way. Blood may make you related, but love makes you family. And you, my dear, are my family now." Her eyes welled with tears, and for a long moment she said nothing. Then she nodded, her voice trembling. "I'd be proud to call you my father." That single sentence filled the hollow spaces inside me with warmth I had thought I would never feel again. For the first time since being left in this place, I felt chosen, valued, loved. Not because of obligation but because someone truly cared. From that day forward, Emily was no longer just my nurse. She was my daughter in spirit. And as I watched the sun dip lower in the sky, painting the horizon with shades of gold and crimson, I realized that though my son had turned his back on me, life had gifted me something even more precious, a chance to build a new kind of family. A week after Emily and I had shared that heartfelt moment in the garden, I found myself lying awake at night, staring at the ceiling. The air felt heavy with unspoken decisions. The truth was clear now. I could not allow my life's work, Everything I had built through years of sacrifice, sweat, and sleepless nights, to fall into the hands of someone who had already discarded me like an unwanted burden. My son had made his choice when he abandoned me at this nursing home without looking back. Now it was my turn to make mine. The next morning, I asked Emily to help me set up an appointment with a lawyer. She looked concerned, almost hesitant, as though she sensed where this was going. "Are you sure?" she asked softly, her hands tightening around the notebook she carried. I nodded firmly. "Yes, Emily. If I've learned anything in these last few months, it's that family is more than blood. My son may have my last name, but he doesn't carry my heart. You do." A few days later, a middle-aged lawyer named Mr. Harris arrived at the nursing home. He was a calm, serious man with kind eyes hidden behind rimmed glasses. I explained to him that I wanted to revise my will completely. He pulled out his pen and paper, ready to draft my instructions. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of control, as though I was writing the final chapters of my life story the way I wanted them to be written, not how others expected. "I want everything, my house, my savings, my investments, to go to Emily," I said clearly, my voice steady despite the emotions swirling inside me. Emily gasped beside me, her hands flying to her mouth. "No, I can't accept that," she stammered, tears welling in her eyes. I turned to her and shook my head gently. "You deserve it, Emily. You gave me back my dignity when I had none left. You gave me love when my own son gave me abandonment. This isn't charity. It's recognition of the family bond we now share." Mr. Harris looked at me, then at Emily, and nodded. "We'll make it official," he said. "But be prepared. Your son may contest this decision if he ever finds out." I chuckled bitterly. Let him try. If he wants to fight for the wealth he never cared to earn, then he'll have to face the truth. He lost his father long before this paper is signed. That night, after the documents were prepared, Emily sat by my side in silence. She seemed overwhelmed, torn between gratitude and guilt. Finally, she whispered, "Why me? There must be others in your life who deserve this more." I reached for her hand, frail though mine had become, and held it with all the strength I had left. "Because you stayed. Because when I was at my lowest, you didn't see me as a burden. You saw me as a human being worthy of love. That Emily is priceless. And no amount of money or property could equal the gift you've already given me." The following week, I signed the new will with a trembling hand, but my heart was steady. Emily stood beside me, her eyes filled with tears, as witnesses and Mr. Harris confirmed everything. In that moment, a sense of liberation washed over me. I was no longer chained to the bitterness of what my son had done. Instead, I was free. Free to leave behind a legacy of love rather than resentment. Later that evening, as Emily wheeled me back to my room, she squeezed my shoulder and whispered, "I promise I'll honor you always. Not because of what you've given me, but because of who you are to me, a father." And with those words, I knew I had made the right decision. My story wasn't ending in abandonment. It was being rewritten into one of belonging, of choice, and of love stronger than blood. It didn't take long for word to reach my son. I don't know whether it was through a relative, a whisper from a mutual acquaintance, or simply his instinct to check on the inheritance he had long taken for granted. But one evening, as the golden light of sunset streamed through the nursing home's front doors, he appeared. His expensive car sat gleaming in the parking lot, a stark contrast to the modest wheelchairs and walkers lined up inside. He entered with an arrogance that was hard to miss, striding down the hallway as though the very floor beneath him belonged to him. When he finally reached my room, he didn't knock. He barged in, his jaw tight, his eyes dark with anger. "Dad, what the hell is this I hear about you changing your will?" His voice thundered in the small room, shattering the quiet peace I had grown accustomed to. I looked up at him from my chair, calm but firm. "It's true," I said simply. His face twisted in disbelief, then fury. "To her," he spat, pointing a finger at Emily, who had been quietly arranging my medications on the nightstand. "You gave everything to this nurse. She's manipulating you." Emily froze, clearly shaken by his venom, but I raised a hand to stop her from responding. My gaze locked with his. No, son. She didn't manipulate me. She cared for me when you wouldn't. When you abandoned me in this place and walked away, she became the family you chose not to be. His fists clenched. You don't understand. I have a family to provide for, responsibilities I couldn't be burdened with. He cut himself off, realizing too late the cruelty of his own words. But I didn't flinch. Instead, I let his words hang in the air like a confession of the truth he'd tried so hard to hide. You called me a burden, I said slowly, my voice thick with pain but unwavering. Your mother and I sacrificed everything to give you a better life. We worked ourselves to the bone, gave you love, gave you security, gave you opportunities we never had. And when the time came for you to return even a fraction of that love, you threw me away like garbage. That is why you will not inherit a single penny of my estate. Emily tried to interject. Maybe we should all calm down. But he cut her off sharply. Stay out of this, he snapped, his tone venomous. Emily's face paled, but she stood her ground, stepping between us with quiet bravery. I won't. Because he deserves better than the way you've treated him. Her words struck him like a slap. He glared at her, then turned back to me, his voice trembling with rage. You'll regret this, Dad. You'll see. She's after your money. When you're gone, she'll disappear, and you'll be left with nothing but betrayal. I leaned forward, every ounce of strength in me surging into my voice. I've already been betrayed, son. But not by her, by you. For a moment, silence filled the room, heavy and suffocating. His chest rose and fell rapidly, his anger bubbling just beneath the surface. Then, without another word, he stormed out, slamming the door so hard that the walls seemed to shake. The echo of that sound lingered long after he was gone. Emily knelt beside me, her eyes filled with concern. Are you all right? She whispered. I nodded, though a deep ache gnawed at my heart. Yes, Emily. For the first time in a long time I am. 'Cause I know I made the right choice. He showed me exactly who he is. That night, as I lay in bed, I thought about the confrontation. Pain mingled with relief. My son's fury hurt more than I cared to admit, but it also solidified my resolve. He had proven once again that I was nothing more than an afterthought to him. And in contrast, Emily's presence by my side shone brighter than ever. In that moment, I realized something profound. Family isn't defined by who shares your blood. It's defined by who stands beside you when the world turns its back. And as the quiet hum of the nursing home settled around me, I knew my future was no longer bound by betrayal, but by the love of someone who had chosen to stay. That night, sleep didn't come easily. My son's words replayed in my mind like a broken record, echoing louder each time. You'll regret this, she's after your money. I turned those accusations over and over, but the more I thought, the more hollow they sounded. He wasn't worried about me. He was worried about himself, about what he wouldn't have once I was gone. That truth stung, but it also gave me clarity. The following week, the lawyer came to finalize the paperwork. Emily was hesitant to be present, insisting she didn't want to intrude, but I asked her to sit with me. Her presence gave me strength. The lawyer slid the documents across the table, explaining every line. The house, the savings, the little nest egg your mother and I had built over decades. All of it legally reassigned. As I signed my name, I felt a strange calm wash over me. It wasn't anger fueling my decision anymore. It was peace. For once, I wasn't acting out of desperation or pain. I was choosing gratitude. Gratitude for the woman who had been by my side when no one else cared to be. Gratitude for the second chance at dignity and companionship she gave me. When the final page was signed, Emily's eyes filled with tears. I don't deserve this, she whispered. I placed my hand over hers and said, You deserve far more. Because what you gave me can't be bought. You gave me kindness when I was forgotten. You gave me family when mine turned away. No money could ever repay that. But my peace didn't last long. A storm was brewing outside these walls, and it came crashing in just a few days later. My son returned, angrier than before, this time with his wife at his side. Her eyes were sharp and cold. Her lips curled into a sneer as though she were walking into battle. "So it's true," she said, folding her arms. "You're giving everything to the nurse." Emily stood quietly behind me, but I could feel her trembling. My son's wife continued, her voice dripping with disdain. "After all we've done for you, this is how you repay us? All you've done for me?" I asked, my voice breaking into a bitter laugh. "Tell me, what exactly have you done? You left me here. You never visited. You treated me like a burden you couldn't wait to get rid of. And now you stand here, demanding respect you never earned." My son looked conflicted, caught between shame and pride, but his wife's eyes burned with greed. "You're making a mistake," she snapped. "She's just using you." Emily finally spoke, her voice steady though soft. "I never asked for anything. I only gave him care because that's what he needed. Because that's what anyone deserves." The room went silent, and for the first time, I saw something flicker across my son's face. Regret. Just for a second. But it faded quickly, swallowed by anger and fear. He stormed out again, dragging his wife with him, leaving only the echo of slammed doors behind. That was the last time he came. Days passed, then weeks, then months. No calls, no visits, nothing. At first it hurt, because no matter how much betrayal stung, a father's heart still longs for his child. But in time the pain eased. Emily became more than just a caretaker. She became my daughter in every way that mattered. We shared meals, stories, laughter, even tears. She introduced me to her little boy, who started calling me Grandpa without hesitation. And slowly I realized, I hadn't lost a family. I had gained a new one. Years later, when my time finally comes, I know I'll leave this world with peace. Not because of the money or the house or the will, but because I chose love over blood, gratitude over entitlement. And perhaps, just perhaps, when my son looks back on his life, he'll realize what he threw away. To anyone watching this, let my story be a reminder. Family is not just who shares your name. It's who stands beside you when the world falls apart. It's who sees you not as a burden, but as someone worth loving. Thank you for staying with me until the end of my story. If you found meaning in it, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories like this. Your support means the world.